Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can send that to me anonymously at asksean.org. So I wanted to do a video about something that you may have noticed, which is that it seems like things are a little tense politically in our culture right now, to put it mildly. And this is something it's coming up in conversations with friends. It's coming up in conversations with clients. Like people are worried. People are scared across the political spectrum, like on both sides. There's a lot stirred up, and so I've done a video before, which I'll try to link to at the end, about how do we talk with people whom we disagree with. And so I say a lot in that I'm going to try to not repeat in this. But I just had a few thoughts I wanted to share that I was sharing with one of my clients earlier today. Kind of two categories, I guess, of thoughts. One, to do with just kind of having some perspective in the midst of all that is going on right now, as much as what's going on is difficult and challenging, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, conservative or liberal, progressive. I want to kind of offer a little, I guess, some of my perspective on our current moment. But then something one of my clients said that I wanted to, I guess, offer thought on is just, and because I'm hearing this from other people too, is just the fear of, am I going to have to lose this relationship with this family member or this close friend because we are in such different places? And so that's kind of, in some ways, the more important thing that I want to get to. But yeah, I guess just kind of as a preface to all this, it is important to say, like, I have a lot of practice with being with difficult emotions. I don't just mean it as a therapist, but I mean in terms of my own difficult emotions. I've had a lot of baggage, and so I've had a lot of therapy, and so I don't mean to suggest any of the things I say in this video. I'm not meaning to suggest like, oh, this is super easy, just feel different. Like, this is really hard stuff, and so I'm not going to go. I don't want this to be super long. I mean, this is kind of one of my more kind of informal videos, but yeah, I want to give that context, because I'm gonna name some things that's like, well, that sounds nice, but how the fucking hell do you do that? How do you live that? And so yeah, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to like be able to be with our emotions and stay grounded. So yeah, I don't know. Just felt important to give that preface, because I don't ever want to sound like I'm just oversimplifying things or whatever. But yeah, the first thing, in terms of just some perspective, whenever in history we exist, there's always going to be things that feel like, oh my gosh, this is scary. Is this the end of the world? Has this ever happened before? What are we going to do? And I think it's important, or at least I find this helpful. I recommend this to you, to try to remember that, like, human history is full of ups and downs. It's full of catastrophes. It's full of wars and violence, and also times of peace and times of healing and times of restoration. So there's always kind of this up and down, and this swinging of the pendulum from one extreme to another, and then some periods in between where things might have some degree of stability. My shorthand for this is, I'll say that the world is always setting itself on fire, or about to set itself on fire, or just set itself on fire. I mean, it's always somewhere in that cycle. Now, that doesn't minimize that we are in our moment, right? And so we have the burden and the gift of trying to live well, trying to be decent human beings in our moment in time, right? So it's like, I'm not trying to minimize the difficulties of our time, but I think I find some comfort in the fact that, in spite of all the crazy shit that human beings have done, all the awful things we've done to each other over thousands and thousands of years, we're still here, right? Like, and somehow even beautiful works of art have gotten made that we still have, like music and poetry and paintings and sculptures and and philosophy and science and, like, so it's like somehow humanity persists, right? Like in spite of all the ways that we fuck things up royally, right? And all of the awfulness that we can do, we're also capable of so much good. Now, that still doesn't offer any guarantees, for my specific life. Like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next year. I make no promises about your specific life, right? Like, some of us may endure really hard things, in the coming years, for whatever reasons, whether, whatever we're afraid of politically, on one extreme or the other, or something that none of us foresee, right? Some, terrible earthquake or who knows what, right? Like, so it's like we don't, tomorrow is not promised, is not guaranteed. But I do take comfort that, like, humanity as a whole will persist. That there's something about us. I mean, for me as a Christian, I think it's something about how we're made, that in spite of the ways we can be so horrible, that there's also like this goodness that carries through and persists, that keeps showing up again and again. So that's one piece, where I guess I try to comfort myself of like, okay, well, yeah, whatever the scary moment of today is, whether, current political strife and cultural division, or something else, right? Somehow we will continue, we will persevere as a species, even if there are times and seasons where stuff is really like horrible, and and people die or war happens or whatever, all those kinds of things. So again, not trying to minimize any of the awfulness, but there's a sense in which none of this is new, right? Like, I mean, history is full of times of political difficulty and strife. It's, I think also too with that, like, we have a tendency as humans to fear things being worse than they end up being. And so while I don't know what's going to happen or who's going to win the election or what the fallout of that will be, either direction in terms of how, our culture will respond to that, or what, whichever political parties will do. Now I totally forgot what my thought was. I'm giving my caveats. Oh gosh. It just reveals that I need a nap. But at any rate, yeah. Even though we don't know what's coming, and I don't mean to minimize any of the hard, this isn't new. Strife amongst humans is not new. So, anyways, all that's like one little element. The thing that I really wanted to get to, hopefully you're still listening, is I would really encourage, as you are having, friends, family who are in a different place from you politically, that can feel confusing, it can feel scary, it can feel infuriating. It can, there can be feelings of like, how can you support whoever, fill in the blank, whichever candidate. How can you support this political party, this political agenda? How can you be such a fucking moron, right? Like, those are the things that come up in us. And so what I want to encourage is really try to feel for and listen for the shared humanity in your friend, in your family member. And what I mean by that is listen for the underlying emotions that we all have. Listen for the places where they're afraid. Listen for the places where they feel hurt, where they maybe feel like they don't matter, where they feel like have felt attacked or minimized or marginalized. And look, it doesn't matter whether you agree with whether they are actually those things, right? Like, if that is their experience, that is what they're dealing with emotionally, right? Like, our emotions are our emotions. Like, so, they could have you may perceive the situation differently and be like, you're not marginalized at all because of this, that, and the other. And yet that, even if you disagree on those details, like, they're still having that emotional experience, and that is driving then their decisions to support this candidate or that candidate, or this party or that party, or these policies or that policies. We like to think that we're all objective and like we only, all of us only make, decisions on facts. But the reality is we're all heavily influenced by our emotions, and we interpret facts in different ways based on how we're feeling and based on the wounding that we carry. And so what I'm inviting is not that you have to agree with your friend or family member who has different views than you, but I want to invite you to listen for those shared emotions. Because we all feel these things. We all have places where we feel afraid. Like, this is what I see this across the political spectrum, whether Republican or Democrat, whether supporting Trump or supporting Biden. Like, I see and experience in clients and in people that I know out in the community, the same underlying emotions, that people are afraid, people are looking for which candidate or party they think is going to take care of them better. And so what's helpful about this is it humanizes the other person, and it creates something that our heart can connect with. Now we're not necessarily going to agree. We're probably not going to agree on a whole bunch of shit, right? But this actually gets to something way more powerful and helpful than even what I was saying earlier. I think it was worth saying the bit about like just having some sense of human history and whatnot. But if you can connect with the shared humanity of somebody that you intensely disagree with, that is way more hopeful, right? Like, that is way more hopeful for the future. And I guess in some ways that's why I wanted to start with the other piece, because this is I feel like the meat. This is the stronger piece. The other piece is, it's helpful and relevant, but this is the piece to practice. Like try to find the humanity in the other person, because if you're not, you're dehumanizing them, but you're also, there's a way that we dehumanize ourselves when we dehumanize another. There's a move that has to happen psychologically. For me to see another human as less than human, I'm having to shut off something in me that is meant to be connected to my fellow human. And so that's not good. That's not good for me. Aside from the fact that it's a shitty thing to do to another person, right? To turn them to see them as less than human, to see them as subhuman. And I mean, this is, jeepers. Our own country has wounds that we're still healing from ways that we've done this. What we've done to the African American community, or to, the Indian community, the American Indian community. So, this is a thing that humans do throughout history, right? Like, this is not the, dehumanizing other groups, other cultures, other races, right? Like, this has always been happening, right? And so this is the invitation for us in this moment, so there's all sorts of things to be scared about and worried about, of like, what's going to happen with this or that. And most of that, frankly, is outside of the control of most of us. So what is the thing that we can do? Well, the thing that we can do is we can fight to connect with the humanity of our fellow humans. We can connect, we can fight to keep our hearts open to that, to not close our heart to the humanity of this person who is voting very differently, who is supporting someone very different than we would feel comfortable supporting. And yet, even if we disagree about all the details and all the logistics and what is factual and what is not factual, and we have all sorts of different, opinions and definitions of like, well, I listen to this news, or you listen to that news, and well, you can't listen to them, da-da-da. In spite of all of that, there's still a human being. There's still a human being who wrestles with fear, who wrestles with shame, who wrestles with pain, who's longing for somebody to come rescue them, which is something, that's this whole other topic, because it's like, nobody can actually rescue us, but this is what we do, though, right? And this is part of how we play out politics, is like, we think this political party or this person is going to, rescue us from the things that we're worried about, which they actually can't, but setting aside all of that, this is still what we do. This is what drives so much, right? And so can we have compassion for that? So this is part of what I do this with people in my own life, friends and family whom I disagree with about like really intense things and so we sit across the table from each other and we manage to not kill each other. And that is a victory. Like, nobody puts a knife in the other person's neck. And we still can like and love each other at the end. And we're going to be voting differently. Like, guaranteed, come November, like, we're going to be voting very differently from each other. And yet we can still like each other, and we can still even respect each other, even if we struggle to maybe respect all of our choices or whatever, right? We can still, like, for me, it has helped me so much to, like, really try to understand, like, okay, this is, you support this candidate or this party because of this fear, this underlying particular fear. You're worried about this more so than worried about that. And so that drives this for you. And so I can see then why you would land that way, even though I make a different decision and I navigate that differently, right? Or you're worried about, blah, 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 or what, whatever the things are. So it's like, yeah, can we keep our hearts open to our fellow humans? Can we listen for the places where they're afraid, where they're ashamed, where they're hurting, and how that is driving their political choices? Because if we can do that, like, that is the best hope for averting so many of the things that we're afraid of, right? Like, if we can stay connected, if we can sit across the table and eat meals with people we intensely disagree with, like, that is the best, that is one of the best chances of averting, whatever disaster you're worried about politically in terms of political fallout in the coming months and years. Is that kind of ability to stay connected, to have connection, to stay in community with one another. So my invitation is don't just separate. Don't kill relationships. Don't be like, well, I can't be friends with them, or I'm not going to see that family member because they're a fucking idiot because they're going to vote for blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that to yourself, right? Like, don't do that to yourself. Like, frankly, that's a lazy way out, right? Like, it's kind of cowardly, and I would say this to my own heart. And it's dehumanizing ourselves, right? Like, by choosing to put the other person in that box. And we might say, well, they put themselves in that box. Yeah, but you're helping build the box by labeling them, by seeing them in a certain way, and by going a certain place emotionally yourself to say, well, they're this, that, and the other. Like, and choosing to not let yourself feel the shared humanity, because they are a fellow human. And they are feeling things that you also feel. They're going different directions with it. You disagree on the solutions. This is the thing, right? As a country, we're all feeling all the same shit. We have vastly different differences of opinion about solutions. And we have really strong feelings about those different solutions because those various solutions are, in some ways, some of us at least would believe would be really hurtful to various people groups in all sorts of different ways. And these are all in conflict with each other. Right? And so the answer isn't to further divide and dehumanize one another. The answer is to do the difficult, courageous work of staying connected to the humanity of our fellow human. Like, staying in community with them, right? And like, that gives us a chance of maybe we can find a way forward, right? And not destroy ourselves, Like, so yeah, that was the meaty stuff I wanted to get to. Is just, I don't shut your heart to your fellow human. Let yourself feel their hurt, feel their fear, feel their shame, feel their pain. Have compassion for it. You can still disagree with them. I'm not saying you have to agree. You can have your own strong beliefs, your own strong, perspective, your own convictions, right? But don't close yourself to their humanity. Because when you do that, you're closing yourself to your own humanity at the same time. You're making yourself into some of what you're accusing them of being, just a different form. And that's not going to do the world any good. That's not going to solve anything. It just becomes another kind of ugliness, another kind of violence. And we don't need any more of that. We have plenty of that. We're good at that as humans. We naturally tend towards that. So, what an interesting time it is. But I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity for healing if we're willing to show up, if we're willing to be brave, and to keep having dinner with the people that we disagree with. Keep having meals together. Don't stop being in community with your neighbors, your friends, your family, just because you vote differently. Well, until next time, peace be with you.